Say we got everybody. Okay, welcome guys again. So I'm going to do a quick introduction of our first virtual presenter, our sports specialist. His name is Donald Oliver. He's a leading voice in sports media and is one of the most recognizable voices in football and cricket commentary across the Western Hemisphere. A distinguished sports journalist and broadcaster, he's currently a key figure at Sportsmax Television, serving as the face of Champions League coverage for the past 2 seasons and the leading voice of the Jamaica Premier League for the last 4 years. 2 times Jamaica Sport Journalist of the Year in 2015 and 2021, and a Prime Minister Youth Awardee for Journalism in 2009. Donald is also a celebrated sports documentarian with his Carifta 49, The Story, ranking among the top 5 in the Americas region at the 2023 AIPS Sports Media Awards, alongside productions from Netflix, BBC, and FIFA. Starting his journalism career at just 17 years old at Radio Jamaica, he quickly made history as the youngest full-time staff member in the sports department. He has since co-produced Olympic and FIFA World Cup broadcasts, led extensive coverage of Barack Obama's visit to Jamaica, and provided expert commentary on international cricket, World Cup qualifiers, and major schoolboy football finals. With 4 acclaimed sports documentaries to his name and an unparalleled presentation style, Mr. Donald Oliver continues to set the standard for sports storytelling in the Caribbean and beyond. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Donald. Please come on and take it away from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. I would like to encourage you this evening to start the process of becoming a journalist, right? Take as many notes as you possibly can. I'm going to be speaking from a PowerPoint presentation as well, or alongside a PowerPoint presentation, I should say. And I want you to just document as much as you possibly can. And whatever you have on your mind in terms of questions, save it until the very end. I don't mind revisiting from the very top what you would have heard. So I'd like to thank all of you to this session, with the Goalside reporters. I hope you learn a whole lot from this presentation, from this session. And yeah, as I said, just make as many notes as you possibly can, all right? So I'm gonna start sharing my screen so you can see exactly what I'm gonna be on about. All right, so I hope everyone can see what exactly is going on here. And one of the first things that I usually tell people who are interested in doing commentary or journalism is that you need to find your voice. I know that quite a few of you are interested in not just sports, but in news. But I can tell you that this will cover a lot of things in terms of media. It's fascinating to open up the avenue for sports because sports is not really taught in Jamaican schools or at the tertiary level here in Jamaica. And I hope that changes in the future, sports coverage and how that should be a part of the mainstay presentation. But I hope this presentation goes a long way in fueling your own path to being a journalist or specifically a sports reporter. So remember I tell you that you need to write notes. Let's begin, because there are 4 things that I actually want you to always remember in regards to sports journalism and journalism overall. Number 1, your passion demands the details. The thing about being a sports reporter, sports commentator is that you don't have to be the brightest boy or girl in the class, especially in regards to going into journalism. It's not a science, it's an art, and art is always open to interpretation, right? So there is no set formula that you need to remember per se. this is just a part of expression. So one thing that I would encourage you to do is that you have to be very much open to listening, learning, and understanding. This is actually non-negotiable in my book. You have to listen, you have to be capable of learning, and of course, you have to understand what you're learning. And my encouragement to you at this point is to be like a sponge, where you take in a lot of the information as you possibly can. You listen intently and make sure that you get as much information as you possibly can, so you'll be able to implement it in the future. That's how we all start in terms of learning. So even depending on your source, because we know that sometimes when you research, it's a little bit tedious, it's a little bit boring. So even if I'm supposed to be a boring presenter tonight, the onus is still on you to get as much information out of me as possible. So you walk away with different clips, you walk away with different ideas, and it improves you. You have to be a sponge in the process. Many people go into the business because they were told that they have the gift of gab, which means that they talk a lot. And probably your parents would have told you that you chat too much if you want a journalist. We hear that all the time, right? But that is not fundamental, I think. I think the key to being a good journalist, the primary key to being a good journalist, is to be a very good listener. You have to have a listening ear, and you also have to have a detailed eye. So, an example, what we see in the present. Let's use in the NBA. I'm not sure how many of you follow what's happening in the NBA, but the other day, LeBron James scored 40 points for the Los Angeles Lakers. And if you're a reporter, you say that, right? But everybody knows that because they saw the game and they saw that he scored 40 points. But as a sports reporter, you need to offer more. What most people don't know is that LeBron James is the second player at the age of 40 to score 40 points, only behind the greatest player of all time, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And he was the first player, of course, to score 40 points. And he was the first player to score 40 points at the age of 40. So that's a context that I speak of in terms of, okay, everybody said that LeBron scored 40 points, but not everybody knows that he's only the second player to score 40 points at the age of 40, behind Michael Jordan. That's how you add your own input. The second thing for you to always remember is that your audience demands your trust. Some of you have been on this earth for what, 12, 15, maybe 18 years, or maybe a little bit more. You don't have a lot of trust with the Jamaican sporting audience for obvious reasons. You haven't been on TV much, you haven't been on radio much. You don't do sports reporting on that level. So you don't have a lot of trust with them. So even if you were to come on Sports Max tonight and you're supposed to be speaking about the Jamaica Premier League and you're supposed to be spitting 100% facts, it wouldn't matter because the audience is hearing you for the first time and they would be skeptical and they don't necessarily have your trust as yet. They're going to be asking, who him? Who's she? But don't worry, because that heals with time and that changes with time. And I can highlight to you in terms of how trust comes in, because if you had a conversation with your mom or dad or with a friend who knows you for years, that trust comes automatically almost, right? Because everything that you say to them probably would be gospel. Like if you told them what happened at school, they would readily believe you because they've developed that trust with you over the years. Even if you break that trust, they will believe you the first time of asking, because that's how trust works. But you develop that trust simply through experience. So I wouldn't worry about that. One of the things that I've always said to people who are interested in the building, in the business, is that once you're honest with your audience, they will remain faithful to you. Once you're honest with your audience, they will always remain faithful to you. So 4 things to always remember. 1, your passion demands the details. 2, your audience demands your trust. 3, your reputation demands your time. This will take a lot of hours if you're really interested in journalism and in sports journalism in particular. And the hardest thing for us to accept as human beings is the vastness of time. Like, a lot of us worry about time even past tomorrow. You know, what's going to happen after I graduate? What is university is going to be like? If I'm going to get a job, what would that look like? You know, we question so many things about the future that sometimes we even get a panic attack. A lot of us even aren't sure what we can do and how long we have to do it. Some of us are not even sure if we want to become a journalist. It's just an idea that we have now, and we hope that the passion is stoked over the next couple of years in order for you to really pursue that this is really what you want to do, especially if you find out that it don't really pay a lot of money, which it most times don't. But that's another conversation altogether. But you have to have a passion for it, and you need to invest the time in order for your reputation to grow. And that's how it goes. For me, I loved being a sponge when I was younger. When I was growing up, I was not only a fan of cricket, but I used to love listening to the cricket commentary on radio in particular. And I would hear what they had to say, and I'd write down what they say. I'd take notes. I'd watch a movie. I would note the different camera angles, note the lighting as well as to how they structure a scene. All that I'm thinking about, you know. When I'm listening to music, I listen to certain chords and how they strike your emotions. Which one made you teary-eyed? Which one made you upset? Which sounds came across as humorous? And you learn from that, because once you have a passion for this, you're going to analyze everything. If you realize that analyzing these things and writing things down and all that jazz feels like a chore, then more than likely, this is not really the job for you. But the best thing is that you have to internalize everything that you see. And at this time, I would suggest that all you have is time, because being a creative is the utilization of that time to improve. Because I am improving, I'm always trying to improve, I'm always trying to learn in order to become better. And one of the dangerous things, the most dangerous things that can happen to you at this stage is that you get tired of the process. And I promise you, you will be unable to know everything in the process for you to be tired of it. But if you're tired of the process, that means that you don't have the passion in the process. So just be careful there. You just have to persevere. A lot of individuals, they have come to me and they said that they wanted to do this, right? And I just give them a couple challenges in terms of the time that they would need and when they would have to meet up with me and stuff like that. And quite a few of them just drop out by the wayside because they realize that they can't commit. They realize that they won't be able to, put other things on hold while you pursue this dream. And you need to be able to commit your time if you want to pursue anything in life, not to mention journalism. So reputation is important. And there are different ways for you to build your reputation. You build your reputation with every conversation that you have in the space. You build your reputation with how you maintain confidentiality. That is critical. You build your reputation with how you go about your interviews. I think that is also critical. And you build your reputation by knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, especially at this age. Because I am pushing you to, more often than not, to be a listener as opposed to a speaker, just so that you're able to soak in everything around you, and you can observe what is wrong and right, etc. You build your personality, or you build your reputation rather with your personality and character. So never let that be lost on you. That's how you build your reputation over time. All right. So again, the three things: your passion demands the details, your audience demands your trust, your reputation demands your time, and the fourth thing is that your execution demands your sincerity. Your execution demands your sincerity. The thing about audiences worldwide, and even those in Jamaica, they know when you are not sincere. They know when you're putting on. Everywhere I go, especially the last few years, people come to me and say, oh, you sound the same way now as you do when you're presenting. How is that? You know? And the thing is, what I am on here is the same person that I am in front of you, same person that I am at home, because I don't think I need to put on a personality when I'm presenting. And I tell you a little bit of history, because back in the day, radio personalities could hide in plain sight, right? Because there wasn't any social media or whatever. So they could just go about their business in the supermarket, and it's only when they speak that someone would maybe identify them. But the thing is that radio personalities could hide in plain sight. But back in the day, a lot of them would put on a particular sound, especially when they go on here. So you probably hear them say something like, Michael Jordan dropped 40 points in game 4 of the NBA Finals. And obviously, if you hear somebody come in the supermarket and say, can I get a 10 of condensed milk and 2 pounds of sugar, you would run away from them, because you're like, no, that kind of weird still. Because they have put on their persona that they use in the media to go about their everyday life. And then that's how you realize, but hold on a second, that's not them. Them just do it for the TV, them just do it for the radio, as opposed to just becoming and enveloping yourself. And the thing is, that is always so difficult to do. And I would encourage you to actually not do that. And I know, say, it's probably funny now thinking about it, how people put on different personas, but that's how it was 20 years ago, maybe. That's how people presented themselves on here. But it's now a more relaxed environment. So we don't really see that these days, especially with the fact that more people are just embracing the fact that you just need to be yourself. Being a television presenter, especially back in those days when there was just like one national channel. In the United States, there was probably like 2 national channels that people would tune into, and it was considered to be the holy grail of media. Remember, at the time, there wouldn't have been a lot of sources that people would get their news. So in Jamaica, 7 o'clock is prime time in the evening, and nobody knew exactly what happened during the day. You come and watch primetime news on JBC before it was named TVJ, and you'd watch news for the first time. Right now, when you're watching news, you're like, oh, I see that on Instagram. Oh, I see that on TikTok. Oh, somebody actually posted on Twitter. Well, accident on Spanish Town Road? Yeah, see it already. So people don't have to go to 7 o'clock news to get the details or even the truth of what took place. But back in the day, it was appointment TV. So people on TV would address the part, put on them jacket, put on them tie, probably act a little pious, because all the information that millions of people would be hearing for the first time would flow through them. And yeah, man, they were the cat's meow. And that's what journalism was painted as. That was what being a TV presenter was painted as. But it's not like that anymore. It's more of an everyman society where individuals are just being themselves, but they just happen to present the news, or they just happen to present the sports. But what else do I mean by sincerity? You need to show your audience that you're in it with them, that you're not removed from the emotions of the story. So whether you're reporting on the death of a Kobe Bryant or a Luton Shelton, or whether you're commentating on an amazing goal, or whether you're talking about a boring cricket match, your audience shouldn't be confused by your sincerity. or your lack of sincerity. So don't speak about Kobe's passing as if you were commentating on an amazing goal. Oh, Kobe Bryant died last night. Really? No, you don't go about that. And you don't speak about an amazing goal as if someone close to you had died. Oh, he hit that from 18 yards on the top of the goal. Wow. What a strike. Beautiful hit. Amazing. Yeah, you don't do that. And that's how you lose your sincerity with the audience, right? And your execution demands your sincerity. And even when you do a vlog or you post certain things and the audio is out or there's a glitch in the video, you're like, you look on the video and you're like, well, people want to see this video, we just have to put it out, yeah. There is no pride in the work, there's no sincerity in your work, and you just decide that, what, I just gonna send it out. Yeah, but I'm business people not hear me. I just go through, yeah, man. Yeah, whatever. It is what it is. And that strikes you down in the eyes of your audience. So 4 things to always remember. If you don't remember anything that I said today, these are the 4 things to always remember. It covers everything. These are the tenets. Your passion demands the details. Your audience demands your trust. Your reputation demands your time. Your execution demands your sincerity. So we are the voices of history. Whether by the written word or the spoken word, our responsibility remains concrete. We are the assigned observers of an event. Therefore, because we are the assigned observers of an event, we must be aware of our environment. I go to different functions, whether it even be press conferences, right? And I see young journalists there, and I see that them having them earphones, and I don't know if they're trying to be in the zone or whatever, but they're just locked in and they are absolutely clueless as to what's happening around them. And things that are happening around them could be a part of the report that they are assigned to do, right? So you just have to be aware. Do you know how many stories are broken because of something that you'd have heard on the side, and then you follow up, and then of course you ask permission if you can carry it, and somebody might say, yeah man, but don't quote me. Just because you are aware of the environment. We must always have the context. Yes, you hear news. Yes, you have information, but what's the context behind it? And it is critical for you to know the context of everything that you say and everything that you report and everything that you commentate on, because that paints the picture. It does paint the full picture. You don't want to see one side or one half of the painting. If you're an audience member, if you're a viewer, you want to see everything. And that's why, as reporters, we must always have the context. Document the moments, just like how you're documenting it now. I hope to Jesus you're documenting it now. Document a lot of the things, if not everything, because you're going to have to go back. And it's amazing how things are tied to one another. So every time you see something in a particular space, you write it down, and it's better than your memory. So document the moments. Double check with other parties. Somebody might have made a shocking statement at a press conference, right? And you're like, no, him say that? You go to a fellow journalist, a colleague, and you're like, did he say that? Or me hear things, and they're like, yeah, he said that. I go to somebody and say, he said that, right? And you have 2 more sources to say, yeah, man, he actually said that. And you're like, all right, I'm good. So I will not be an idiot, because I'm not the only one who heard something different. But I have done the collaboration necessary to know that, okay, this is what we all heard, and this is the truth of the matter. So double check with other parties. Identify the biggest news. Sometimes you can feel it. Sometimes you can not feel it, and that's when you probably need to pluck out of obscurity, so to speak. But sometimes the biggest news is really the biggest news, and there's nothing behind it. That's your lead. right? A lot of people would think that because, all right, let me say it a different way. You read a story or you read a book or a novel, and the novel is not going to put the twist at the beginning. The novel is going to set it up. It's going to see different sides to the story. Another new character comes in, and then probably in the final third, there's a twist in Act 3. There's a twist there, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's the biggest thing that I've seen in this novel that I'm reading. But news and sports isn't that way, right? You don't tease people really when you're reporting the news. You can tease people when you're doing a documentary. You can even tease people if you're doing a feature, depending on the length of the feature. But if you're reporting news, sports news or news, if you're reporting news, you don't tease people. You just shock them with it. This is what happened, and these are things that brings it into context last week, because back then, they had infighting. But this is what happened, where the killing of the man took place at 5 o'clock this morning, and others were rushed to hospital. But at the back of the story, you're like, well, this is a reprisal for what took place last week, blah, blah, blah. So identify the biggest news. That is critical when you're writing these short stories or when you're doing reporting. And be confident in what we write and say, right? You have to be confident. But this is obviously not false confidence that I'm talking about. I'm talking about like real confidence. And confidence only comes from what you have done in the background as research, how you come to this center point of your presentation to say, okay, I've done all that I can. I'm ready to present it island-wide, to break this news for people to accept what I'm saying. Come across with the sincerity that I spoke of before and present it to your audience with that level of confidence. Because at the end of the day, you are not the only person to know, but you are the best person to say it. There is never going to be a point that you are the only person who's going to know anything, right? Because even if it's a unique news story, you must have heard from somebody else, because you had to have a source. But that source doesn't have the opportunity to come on television or to come on radio to say that they're going to break it. They have the opportunity to speak about it in a story that you're doing, but you're the person who is telling the story. You're the best person to actually say it. So don't be pressured by the fact that, oh my goodness, unless you're making it up. And I don't expect none of them to make up things. You are not the only person to know, but you are the best person to say it. And that's where the confidence comes from. So what is research and why is it essential? Let's go through this quickly. Research is a means to seek out and retain information. I've said this before: reading, listening, interviewing. Yes, sometimes your first-hand interviews are the key to the research that you're doing. Not everything has to be third party, which is so cool, right? Like, you probably think that, okay, when you're talking about research, you're talking about, oh, you got to go to the library and read up books and pick up an encyclopedia and watch videos of the past. But sometimes when you're doing research, you say, you know what? I'm doing research on how Sportsmax was formed. Yeah, I can go on YouTube or AI these days, I don't know. You can go on it and you can read up on whatever, but you can also say, but hold on a second. Who was the first CEO at Sportsmax? Not him there CVM now. Isn't he running CVM? I wonder if I can set up an interview with him and just talk to him. I just need 5 minutes of his time. And all of a sudden, your research is first-hand experience, because you have decided to go to the direct source to get information. First-hand research. So interviewing, you have stimulated your own research. Then, of course, there's observing. what you see around you, being very much in tune with your environment, and of course, documenting. I'm harping on that today, aren't I? Documenting is so important. And the reason why it's so important, because it has saved my life on so many occasions. Not because my brain bad, which it kind of is, but it has saved me because it always adds context when it's written in front of you, when you just have to take a little glance and say, oh, yeah, it opens up different avenues for you, because then you don't have to rely on memory. It's right there. Research is essential to your confidence. Examples of sources: press releases, official websites, interviews, whether it's what you look on YouTube, past interviews, or whether you would have created them yourselves. Social media, of course, these days, everybody likes to put out their own thoughts on what has just happened in their lives, and you can use that as reference, right? You just go on Twitter, and last year this time you realize that the CEO said something about selling several of his stocks, and all of a sudden you go on Twitter and you do that type of research, and you said, oh yeah, last year on Twitter he said that he wanted to sell 15% of his stocks. There you go. That's the research. That's the quote that you need. And of course, as far as sports is concerned, you have different databases, right? For cricket, it's ESPN, Cricinfo, and a number of these competitions have their own websites. NBA, UEFA has its own website as well. So it helps with your research. And this may seem annoying for you, but I promise you it's not annoying. The next thing I'm about to say: research gives you gravitas and helps to layer your presentation. Now, whenever I do research, and I do tons of research, especially for a live commentary game, I only use about 10% of it. And then you're like, Donald, but that's a waste of time. Like 10%, you write down 8 pieces of information, and at the end of the day, you just write the equivalent of 3/4 of a page that you say in your commentary game. Yeah. I know why. Because one, the momentum of the game that shifts, so you're probably not able to speak as much as you would want to in the research, but the confidence that it gives you, knowing that you have this information for your audience, but you're just sitting on it until the right time, and the right time never come, but you're like, well, I still have it anyway. There's a confidence that comes with that, to know that you had all this information, and the little that you're able to give in your commentary or in your report was enough to make it sound as if that brother there know him stuff. Him know it. Because it's like you're sitting on a mountaintop and you don't have a scream, but people see the elevation in the conference and like, oh yeah, him spitting facts. And just one thing you say. But that helps with your confidence. Do not be frustrated with the fact that you only use 10% of your research. It really and truly don't matter. Doesn't matter at all. So research, have that backative to really go in depth into what you're presenting or reporting. Research makes you look great. Let me tell you a story. So I was doing the Costa Cup game, Russell's and Clarendon College, a few years ago. It was going to be held in Montgomery, right? And we went to Russell's to do a feature on Russell's. And I went with 2 of my friends, 2 of my videographers. They were there with me, and we were shooting a feature on the Russell's team. And it was just by the way that we saw one of the players. He was one of their leading scorers, right? His name was Leonardo Fagati. And we were just talking. It wasn't even an interview. We were just talking off mic, and someone just chimed in and said about his father used to play for Russell's. And I'm like, yeah, you know what I'm saying, man? No, I never knew his father because I'm not that old. But, I never knew his father, but I was hearing it for the first time. And the only thing that I regret was that I actually didn't write it down. But because the story was so compelling, I remembered it. And The videographer who was there on the day was the one who captured the close-up at the beginning of the video that I'm about to show you. He captured the close-up of what was taking place at the very start of the game. The other videographer who was there, he does the replays in the truck. So all three of us were the only ones who knew the story in a production that had over 40 odd people. Just the three of us knew that story. Look what happened at the beginning, at the end of the game. I joined the two clips together. Look at this.
And emotional, Leonardo Pagati, so much responsibility on his shoulders in particular. He bears the legacy of his father, who died when he was just 3 years old. He actually led the line. Then Anthony Pagati overseas for a couple of years, scoring goals. And I can just imagine it's so emotional for him to be here at this stage. Until cut to the bit. But he's for goal! It was written in the stars. Leonardo Pagati to his father. An emotional goal, an emotional strike, and the Russians celebrate because they have won and of the title.
No, I'm not sure if I've had a more fulfilling moment being part of a team at Sportsmax as I did because of that moment, because of the research, because of the alliance of the brothers that I went with to actually do the feature. The funny thing is that, yeah, we did a feature on Rassis. We didn't even put that in the feature about what his father's legacy was about. We didn't even put that in the feature for the pregame show. It was just an added bit of information for me to utilize. I had no idea that this young man was going to cry at the beginning. I had no idea that my videographer would have picked him up because he was the one who picked it up, you know, and I'm like, somebody said in my ears, Don, look at the screen. Looked at the screen, saw that he was emotional. I just put two and two together. I'm a ball because I'm father. All right. And I just put that into context. And then for him to score the winning goal, I don't think I've been a part of a more emotional and fulfilling moment in sports. And I just hope that you guys can experience something like that one day because it is simply amazing. And that all stems from research. All right. Writing, crafting, engaging articles and headlines. Writing must be clear, compelling, and engaging. Kind of self-explanatory there. Good sports journalism tells the story behind the game, as was the case before. Leonardo Pagati scores a goal. Wonderful. It was a good goal. One touch inside the box, keeper beaten. But what's the story behind the game? What's the story behind that goal? In memory of his father. Not everybody can get that. If you're fortunate to do so, run with it because that's the story. That could be the headline. Sons brings father's legacy to the core once again. Won the Acosta Cup for Rassis High. Good sports journalism tells the story behind the game. It is possible. Identify the best part of the story. It is usually the lead, as I said before. In identifying the lead, you have the idea for a headline. Headlines change, and they have changed over the years, right? Because in the past, people wanted headlines to be short and to the point, but headlines have actually changed in terms of its definition, and we are more lax in terms of what a headline should really be. So this is the headline, and I love this headline. It was on Sportsmax TV, so that's another plug there. Barnes declares intent after stunning 44.97 season opener. I'm coming for everything is in quotes. No, I don't need to be a track and field fanatic, you know, because I don't even need to know who Barnes is. But what? Barnes? What declares intent? You don't even know the context of what 44.97 means. But because stunning is there, you're like, wait, I was a season opener too? And what did he say? I'm coming for everything. Yeah, that's a headline. That's a proper headline. That's how you write a great headline. It gives you enough for you to want to read the article. And yeah, so in the past, editors would have wanted a shorter headline, but we're coming to an age now where headlines are a little bit longer, not too long, because you don't want to just write a story in a headline. And we see it these days, don't they? Like you go on social media, probably on the Gleaner Instagram or Observer Instagram, and you see the first couple of, to be fair, it's not a headline, but they do put the first couple of lines in there, and they say click bio for full story, or go into story to click to find out the, go into Instagram story to find out the story. And they provide a link to the story. But yeah, a lot of people just run away with the headline without actually knowing the context of the story. And sometimes headlines are important because that's all people care to read, which I don't want to hear any of you say, because you shouldn't just be satisfied with a headline, but you should be reading the stories. That helps with your development as well. How to ask the right questions. Conducting interviews is a skill every sports journalist must master. Questions should be open-ended, thought-provoking, and respectful. The importance of listening and adapting during interviews. When in doubt, remember who, what, where, why, when. Rely on your research and observations. So again, because you are practicing at this stage to be a sponge, it will become second nature to you when you're doing interviews. I promise you that. Because what happens is that you're opening up yourself to receiving not just the information that is coming to you, but you're opening up yourself to adapt well during interviews. So it's not just a matter of I have 5 questions. This is question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, or question number 4. Based on the answer that you receive, you could have a 3A, and then him answer again, and you're like, okay, a 3B, and him say some foolishness, and you're like, okay, a 3C, before you move on to question number 4. That's how it works. But that only comes about because you have opened up your appetite to listen. ESPN's Doris Burke is my favorite live sports interviewer. She is, a lot of people say that she's a leading sports sideline reporter, or they like to say the leading female live sports interviewer reporter for the NBA. No, she's just good, full stop. She's better than anybody else I've ever heard. And this is an interview that she had with Stephen Curry after they won the NBA Finals over, I think it was Cleveland. Take a listen.
Well, a very ecstatic Stephen Curry, who just shared a beautiful moment with your head coach, Steve Kerr. Can you tell us what that was about?
He talks about at the beginning of the year, all that we have to go through. I know it's a game, I know it's basketball, but all the sacrifice, the trials and tribulations you go through during the season to get to this point. And for him especially, we know what he's been through physically the last 3 years. So for him to fight through all of that, be there for us every single day, and for us to celebrate this moment, that's what makes it all worth it.
Your team was in exactly this position a year ago, and the Cavaliers put it to you in Game 4. Almost from shoot-around this morning, what was the intention of this group?
His experience last year to our advantage. We knew that they were going to come out with a tough first punch, and we answered it and ran right back at them and set the tone for the whole game. And they made some many runs, but over the course of 48 minutes, our will took over. Unbelievable feeling to come in here on a mission and get the job done.
Mark Jackson at one point said early in this basketball game he thought you were sensing the moment. So how did that shape the way you were aggressive?
Just to attack. I mean, I know I had the last game where I was kind of pressing, but nothing was really going. Trying to make a difference other ways. But tonight, just trying to keep confidence in myself, know that I can make shots, and just appreciate the moment. God is great to put me on the stage, and no matter what happens, win or lose, I'm gonna have fun and play my game.
Steph, there are certain one of you who have been here, and there was a moment late in a timeout where you put your arm around Draymond, and it looked like there was something special happening there. Can you describe what that was?
We've been teammates for what 6, 7 years. I don't even know, and we've been through a lot. And I told him, when 7, 8 minutes left, we're trying to get to the finish line. I just do it the right way. Be us. You know how special he is to our group, and I just want to let him know I appreciate him.
We'll see you at the podium.
Thank you, bro.
I love that interview. Really love that interview. Doris Burke, I think, asked 3 of the questions based on her own observations during the game, and only one of the questions was premeditated, let's say, before the game actually got underway, and then she provided the context with the question. But 3 of the questions were based on what she saw during the game, what she heard from her co-commentator to provide context to a question that she was asking in terms of how they felt and how they approached certain things. And it's just, she's a woman who is very much aware. And in order for you to be an interviewer, you have to be aware. You have to just be that kind of sponge to really allow information to just like flow through you, flow out of you, and for you to be a conduit to get some of the best answers when you're interviewing. Hot Ones host Sean Evans is one of the best interviewers, I think, as well. If you watch the show Hot Ones, you hear his guests always complimenting him about the type of research that he does for the shows.
Is it true that you once crushed 4 pounds of pasta to win a bolognese eating competition?
Oh my God, you've really done your research. Yes, I once ate 4 pounds of spaghetti bolognese in an hour. That was the
It's very impressive.
time frame.
Yeah.
That made it more difficult. Otherwise, I don't know how much. Probably not that much more because I was really sick. It was a lot of spaghetti. It was like a bucket of spaghetti.
But you
bolognese.
won.
But I won.
So last year, Vogue dubbed you the signature Gen Z fashion star, and I know clothes have been a passion of yours since the days of Do It Daily, a fashion blog you published in school.
Oh my God, don't. How do you know about that? You really did your research, didn't you?
Hey, you're Dua Lipa. We have to know.
Oh my God. All right. Let's talk about it.
So something that really sets you apart as an actor is your relentless dedication. And my favorite example of that is the years that you spent training as a clown under Slava Polunin for his off-Broadway production of Slava's Snow Show. How would you sell the traditional Russian art of clowning to people who only know it from like birthday parties in the circus?
Wow, I'm surprised. I'm very impressed. You're asking me about this. This is a deep passion of mine that I don't really talk about. It's very, very real. It's very heartfelt. It's not at all about like, this is what I love about them, that they give performances that, and I know it might sound strange, but because they can dress up as something other than just a normal human.
So when we had Seth Meyers on, he talked about how one of the main roads to success in comedy, it used to be directly through the improv theaters in Chicago. And you started at the Ground Lanes. Is the live stage show still the best place to cut your teeth in comedy, or is that path more or less given way to the internet?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I think now you have this whole other universe, whole other outlet to record sketches or characters and put them online and have people discover it that way. At the same time, there's just no substitute for, honing your craft in front of a live audience and getting that immediate feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an environment where a lot of questions being asked these days, especially in live sport, is how you feel, and I think we have created almost like a little bit of an echo chamber because, and I'm not sure yet how we are going to correct this, but a lot of athletes don't like giving interviews as much as how a lot of journalists don't like asking athletes questions. Because one, either they don't want to do it or they can't answer. And because it's in that little echo chamber, there is no elevation in terms of the answers given or the questions we ask. And well, let's hope the next generation of journalists can change that. Adapting to digital media, live tweeting, short form content, sports journalism is increasingly moving to digital platforms now. We're talking about live tweeting, blog posts, and social media interactions are now essential. How to write for digital media? It's with brevity, immediacy, and engagement. Importance of multimedia content, videos, GIFs, and images to complement articles. And we're living in a day and age where you can just tweet and, breaking news comes from you, Fabrizio Romano. Here we go, his tell sign when he's announcing an arrival or a departure from a club. He's made a living off this. He's a brand because of what he does. This announcement in regards to Cristiano Ronaldo back to Manchester United in 2021. Here we go, done deal between Juventus and Man United on the permanent move. Cristiano has accepted the contract proposal from Manchester United, and he's coming back. He writes articles sometimes, Fabrizio Romano. Mind you, English isn't his number one language, but so he sticks with tweets and he breaks news all the time, and that's it. He comes on podcasts and he has his own shows as well, and he does interviews and he expounds on a lot of what he tweets. But this is his Aki. This is his foundation. This is his bread and butter. Here we go. And he has over 23 million followers on Twitter because of it. And he has his own YouTube channel as well. And those videos on YouTube are usually no longer than 5 minutes each time he uploads, just to expand on the tweet. So he's really made a proper brand for himself, Fabrizio Romano. So it's something that you can think about doing. Preparing for live sport as we're coming to the end of this presentation. Research, write as much as you can before the day and on the day. That is self-explanatory, especially since I've been harping on documenting things since the start of this presentation. Keep your eyes on those who are telling the best parts of the story in the game. The aforementioned commentary on Leonardo Fogatti and the fact that his father also led the line for overseas and that he died when he was just 3 years old, so he didn't even really know of his father's exploits, just heard about it. And of course, keep your audience engaged. Sometimes the match can be really boring, but it's up to you to keep your audience entertained. And usually if you have a good co-commentator, it goes a far way for that broadcast to be enhanced. So that's how you prepare for live sport. And be curious, not judgmental. I am encouraging you guys to open up your curiosity to life. One bit of advice that I told a friend of mine who she was interested in being better at her job in media was, you have to live. And by living, I don't just mean like going out and partying. By the way, I should not be partying on underage. But yeah, I mean in terms of just going out and just soaking up what life is about. Just be intentional with observing what are the things that are around you. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to play another clip. This was when Kingston College won the Manning Cup. And I know that there are several women's people. There's people here. I'm so sorry. It wasn't. I didn't know. But anyway, so this is when KC won the Manning Cup a few years ago, for the first time in 32 years. Now, I'm going to play the commentary in a little bit, but just to give you context, right? There was a series called Game of Thrones. There was a series called Game of Thrones that I actually loved. I didn't join from the start. I actually joined in the final season. So I binge watched the first few seasons together and came and watched the last season, and I became a fan of it. And around that time, it was the big thing, right? And in the context of people were waiting for such a long time for this winter that was about to come. And I always heard the phrase in the series about the long night, and they're just waiting for the long night to come about, and everybody's just holding themselves together from a mental standpoint to just withstand this long night and this winter, which is expected to just rock the place. So I utilized it. And this is what happened.
They have reached the promised land after 32 years in the wilderness. It's the most dramatic of finals inside the National Stadium. Purple pride reigns supreme. Dramatic scenes here at the Mecca, Jamaica football, because Kingston College, they are at the top of the pile.
Is it because what we do is art? We have to see art in everything, even in the movies that we watch, even the series that we binge watch. Because it's amazing how they open up your imagination to expressing yourself in different ways. And that's what I'm encouraging you to just be a part of, in terms of when I say just live life, just explore, open up your eyes and ears to the world around you, because at no point in this day and age you should be bored, because information is right at your fingertips, and this helps you grow. Wrapping up now. So there are things to try. These are the things that you need to try starting now. And I think I heard somebody said that in order to be really good at something, you need to do like about 10,000 hours of it, of practice and repetition. Well, if you haven't started, it starts now. So let me give you tips on what you can do, what you should do. Set up a mock 10-minute interview with your friend. Do research on them by speaking with your teachers, parents, and friends, so you can form the questions. Record the interview with your phone. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be like an on-camera interview. It can just be like audio, but practice. And I would encourage you that if you just have one friend, that after you do it the first time, you do it the second time, you do it the third time, and you improve. If you're fortunate to have more than one friend who is serious about actually helping you on this journey by being on the other side of this interview, utilize what you have. Scout YouTube videos of sporting interviews and rewrite them. I am not going to stop speaking about writing, because writing helps you big time in terms of retaining and it being a part of your DNA. Watch your favorite commentary clips on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Write down what they say and try to match the cadence of the commentator. That's what I did. I grew up in an era of magnificent commentators. Simon Crosskill, Ed Barnes, Lance Whitaker. And no, YouTube didn't exist. You know what I had to do? I had to record it on a thing called cassette. Google it. I don't have time to explain. I had to record it on cassette, play it on a Walkman, and this is me rewinding and playing and listening back to it. For cricket, Fazir Mohammed, Andrew Mason, Simon Crosskill again, because he did both football and cricket. And whenever they said something nice, I just go back on the cassette and I just rewind it and I just listen to it again. And I just repeat what they say. Bishop is out led before first ball. Larson strikes an important blow. And Danny Morrison springs towards Larson. He's on a hat trick. And it was a symphony for me, because this is what I loved. This is what I loved hearing. And even at the time, I didn't say to myself, oh my goodness, I wanted to become a commentator. I just loved being a part of that art. And it may seem silly. It may seem silly you doing commentary on some PlayStation game, but it goes a far way. Watch your favorite television presenter and document what they say at the start of a show, what they say going to a break, and what they say at the end of a show. Again, it's all about documenting, but this is just a different side of what presentation is like. So document all that, write it down, and of course, you're going to practice it. A lot of us read from the prompter. Some of us don't need the prompter, but this is just a start. When you try to perfect reading, it helps. Develop a habit of speaking perfect grammar and full sentences. Everybody likes patois, I suppose. I don't know. I hear that I can't speak it very well. I mean, I tried, but some of us just don't have that DNA. For the rest of us, I'm urging you to pick a global language and not patois. Patois is nice when it's a part of your vernacular, when you're in the space, but we are talking about a bigger space here in terms of the globe. A lot of the world's population speak English. If you can learn a second language. If you have the wherewithal, if you have the time to do it. But we're talking about the basics here, so stick to the one that you know. Perfect the one that you know. I hear scientists talking about the benefits of us possibly leaving Earth and living on Mars. I like Earth. So my suggestion to you is to like English. Make sure that you perfect it first, and then you can think about going into another language. You know, it don't make no sense that you basically know just a small fraction of the English language, and they say, you know what I want to know? I want to know Mandarin. No, stick to English and grammar first. Develop your full sentences, articulate yourself well, and then you can, foray into another language. 10,000 hours of practice and repetition continues. Write a short essay on your experience with each task you complete. I'm sure you probably do something like this and you probably wonder why. Oh, Missy, teach me this. Why am I writing an essay on it? Because we need for you to understand that you understand what you understand. Enough said. Follow and observe the social media accounts of sporting personalities, journalists, and media companies. Yeah, you just see what they say on a daily basis. And let that become a part of you, because observing helps you. I learned how to edit because I spent time with a friend of mine who was at CVM. Her name was Celestine, and I sat beside her and watched her edit. And all of a sudden, literally, all of a sudden, after several weeks, I sat in front of the computer and I just knew what to do. And that just simply came because of observing. Be aware of the environment around you. Just observe. It goes a long way. Experience live games at different venues and don't go alone. Yeah, I mean, we are in Jamaica, night games. Experience these games, but don't go alone. Yeah, it's always a vibe. Take a deep dive into CapCut and other editing software. I know some of you would have probably started that already, because some of you are active on social media. Continue to do that, because it's going to be instrumental in doing your own thing in the future. Document any sporting activity at your school. Write and record your report. Not everything needs to make it on air, but you need to do everything to develop you. So yeah, even though nobody not going to see your report, write and record your report anyway. And there are different sporting activities taking place at your school more often than not, from football to volleyball to chess. Write a report on it. Speak about how intense the auditorium was when he moved the knight forward, or whatever the thing that knights do. I don't know. I don't really follow chess. Push your writing technique by producing draft after draft after draft. Guys, I know this is even tiring to listen to in terms of how much writing you need to do, but one of the things that I encourage you to do is to push your limits. And when I'm telling you another story here. When I got to Sportsmax, I had an editor. He was from South Africa. His name was Max Shunungwa. And I thought I was really good at doing promos. Like, I thought I was the best in the country at doing promos. I probably am. But the point is that I thought at the time that I was the best, and I produced a gem of a promo. And Max looked at me and said, "No, what? No, no, Donald, this is not it. No, go do it over." And I was so ticked off at him because I spent time on this. The words were on point, and he just wanted me to just do it again. And I think he did that with me about 2 different times. And I was so surprised with the end result. Because what it did, it was like I broke a barrier that I had not observed or even seen before. It was just something that was there. But because I was like in my own mind thinking, "Oh, Donald, you're so good. Oh my God, Donald, you are brilliant." Didn't even realize that I could be more brilliant. So is it that first draft or that second draft or that 13th draft? Do it again. Do it again. Push your writing technique by producing draft after draft after draft. And test your vocal limits by voicing what you write in different ways. Record your process. Always record the journey so you know how far you've come. So you can track it. This is how I sounded when I began. And then, hey, maybe 5 years in the future, but we're going to look at it periodically, right? You can listen back after a month, depending on how intense you have been in terms of doing the drafts and in terms of doing the exercises and in terms of writing the reports and voicing it. You will see a change depending on your intensity as you do your 10,000 hours of practice and repetition, which begins now. Join a club which will help with your speech. Any club in regard to the arts, if you can enter JCDC festival or whatever, anything that can put your mind at work, whether it's debating, join that club. Push your mind to the limit, allow yourself to articulate well. It will go a far way in regards to these 10,000 hours that I'm speaking about. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure presenting to you. And I'm sure I would like to think that you have questions. So, Andrew, you can lead this session once more in taking the questions.
Let me just say, first of all, Donald, that was an incredible presentation. And I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else here learned a whole lot. And we do have questions. I'm sure they have questions. I'm going to wait for someone else to ask the first question. You can go ahead and unmute your mic. And yeah, Jude, go ahead.
My name is Jude Thompson yet again. Good afternoon. So I'd like to say that me and a group of friends at my school, we've decided to start a bit of our own media company or brand, let's say, called Streamline Sports Media. And we were thinking if we should make a website where we could post our articles on, but then we realized that we don't know how to make a website.
Okay.
Go on.
What's the question, Jude?
Sir, the question is, do you know how I would be able to make the website that I can post the articles on?
Well, there are certain options that you can take. I think Wix is the most popular option that you can take, and it helps you with that process to create that website. But I mean, I would be a little bit careful with that because there's a lot of maintenance that needs to happen. I believe that you can tell your story in more innovative ways at this point in time. There's an Instagram page, I believe it's called Humans of New York, where they are able to tell specific stories accompanied by pictures, and the story, which is not too long, is in the description. And I think that's a very cool way of telling your story without having to even contemplate about maintaining a website. Because the thing is that it's there, as opposed to you having to create it from scratch, and you'll get traction. And once you build that audience, then you can think about probably creating a website. But I think the best way to start is to be on social media and tell those kind of stories in that way, whether on Instagram, Humans of New York, I said, or you can create something original on TikTok. I think that's the neatest way to go.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Drew, for that question. Omari? Is your name
Good
right?
night. Good night. Good night. You got my name correct. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I would like to thank you for what you've said tonight. It's been very how would I say this? It's helped out a lot. There are some things I was kind of learning from before, like in comm studies, since I'm in sixth form, about research and how to do a proper interview, and I felt like this definitely expounded upon that. In response to even what Jude said, I'd like to say that as someone who's as someone who's interested in web development, I can definitely say that Wix is definitely probably one of the most widely used options. There's also other sites like what's it called? I think there's one called like Site Daddy or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. GoDaddy, right. And but I definitely agree with Don. I definitely agree with Mr. Mr. Oliver. Right. I was scrolling up through my notes to find the last name. I agree with Mr. Oliver that starting off with a website, especially getting traffic on a new website, is very difficult, because to get people to get it to show up in people's search results and tailoring your website is, put bluntly, an art in and of itself. So it would be better to rely on the existing algorithms in social media, where you can use tags, you can get mentioned by other creators, collaborations, and all of those, in order to properly boost your content and boost your presence online. After that point, you can then create your website, which you can even hire a proper developer if you had started making money off of your content, and you'd have a really strong way forward with that, and even make revenue off of your website itself.
That's true. That's all true.
Okay, from my question though, is we've been learning in digital media lately about in the subject digital media, about the proper representation of our Caribbean culture online and in media, whereas it is that more often than not, because we tend to copy the styles of creators globally, then there's a lack of the representation of Jamaican culture, or proper representation of Jamaican culture, strong representation across the web. So I was just curious on how would you, if you wanted to represent more so the Jamaican culture in your work and in your media, how would you properly cope with that while still using standard English and getting across?
Mr. Calamari, that's $1 million question, you know. And you wanted me to give you free advice here? No, but you actually hit a very good point though. And so, and you know, I'm not calling them out, but like, for example, was it like about a year ago that Quest Times on Instagram started doing this graphic, this blue graphic thing that mimicked a lot of the stuff that we would see overseas? And the first thing I was saying was, why go for that? Why go for what a TMZ does or other news headline? Like I didn't really understand or even grasp the reason. So I believe that is an issue, right? And I think we have been fooled to think that we have to do certain things to be a part of an algorithm. And that's a disadvantage of joining existing platforms, right? Because we almost have to conform in order for us to become popular. But what we need, first and foremost, is to have engaging content. I think a lot of the content that we have right now is, for want of a better term, like cascas and disagreements and stuff like that. And yeah, that has space in terms of spreading like wildfire. But I think an innovative way is to just present what is normal to be, beautiful. And I use the example of Humans of New York. Like, come on. That's not supposed to have traction for nothing, right? Like, these are just everyday people just telling their stories, and it has just caught wind. And I believe that that is just critical in terms of, because people appreciate everyday stories. So I wouldn't even worry about how we can Jamaicanize something. I think what we need to do is to just be authentic. We don't even have to label it as Jamaicanizing it or putting it to the forefront saying, okay, this is strictly Caribbean. We are entitled to tell our stories. So just tell our stories, and that would be the best way forward. I think you should approach it. Don't approach it from the angle saying, okay, I have a story here. How can I make it more Jamaican? No, you don't have to do that. Just tell the story.
All right, yes, sir. Thank you.
I want to tag on to that as well. And ditto everything that Donald just said. I think what happens a lot in what I see Jamaican news, and I read the Glean, I read the Star, and I read the New York Times, and there's a general deficit of the research that you're talking about, Donald. I think it's straight reporting, no analysis, or very few, not all the time I'm saying, but when I compare, the level of the writing and journalism is just so much impacted by the amount of research, and they can give you links to previous articles when they say something, and you can all of those different stuff. When you have a story, you can put that texture and color by the research and the additional information. I think that's what gives it the value, which is what Humans of New York does. And at a running club, we had a page, and that's what we used to do sometimes. We feature an individual, and we just write a story about them, and it was some of the most engaging content, But yeah, I just wanted to implore that. Well, I have a question as well, more practical, or like instructive in terms of the notes that you make. When you say you write 8 pages, is it like an 8-page article that you write, or is it just notes that you're writing down in preparation?
No, just heck no. I don't have time to write out. No, these are just ad hoc notes. To be fair, they probably would make sense to me and don't make sense to anybody else. But the point is that I just document it. But yeah, usually I find myself like for some matches, especially when it has a lot of information on it, more often than not from all the internet and past articles, it's just a matter of copy and paste and then just make it bite-sized so that they can be dropped into commentary. And sometimes I end up with 8 pages of it. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I'm not going to utilize all of it. But as I said, it just gives that level of gravitas where you're so confident in everything that you speak. And it's critical, because the confidence comes across in how you speak. If you do, and listen, this happens in life, so this is relatable, right? If you're studying for an exam and you didn't read a lot, and the exam is supposed to be some form of presentation that you have to do in front of the class. When you don't have the information, you're going buck shuffle. When you do have the information, you're going to speak fluently and you're going to be so confident, and the aura is going to be there, and you just feel good about what you've done. But when you do limited reading, or you're just working it ad hoc, or you're working it on the top of your head, like it's very difficult for you to come across as someone who is confident in that presentation. So trust me, it goes a far way in how you sound, as opposed to just, okay, I just doing this for information purposes. No, it helps with how you sound.
And when, you know, like it's funny, in history I just studied, you had to study independence and Jamaica independence. And you read the book, but then when you talk to your grandparents and they give you their perspective, and then you talk to somebody else, or you watch a documentary on it, and all of a sudden things are just connecting.
Yep.
And it's like you speak about it like you were there almost, you know, and you have a different
Exactly.
perspective. That's the kind of
Exactly.
research that adds to it, yeah. Like, we're pretty much out of time. I know someone else may have a question. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Good night. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question. My question is, other than pure shock value, what do you think makes a story stick with the audience?
You being able to relate to them consequences. Yeah, because shock value is for them to turn around. You being able to relate to them, the consequences is what will make them stay. You know what I'm saying? So what does the shock value mean? What's the aftermath of what's happening here? How do you guide them through what they are hearing, the repercussions, immediate and long term? That's gonna play in their mind. That's gonna resonate. Shock is just sensationalism. It's just at the tip. It's just in the moment. That's what shock does. But for it to resonate, that's when it settles. And that usually comes when you're there pondering and you're like, oh my God, what happened? What happens to the kids? Or so they're into the final. This is the first time the school is going to the final. But I remember this player attending the school, they've never been to the final before. You know, it's always the aftermath that's going to sit with individuals when you give them something outside of what grabbed them in the first place. And yeah, shock value is not going to last. It's just going to, you know, turn their head. But it's you explaining to them and feeding them the aftermath of the shock value that's going to let it register in their hearts forever. And I think that's what you should always go for.
Wow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I turn on again. So, I mean, you know, the Super Bowl was on Sunday, 2 days ago. You know, none of these teams I care about. I'm a Falcons fan. But, you know, it wasn't until I tuned in a little bit and someone was talking about, it was a podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about the consequences of either team winning. And that's what was stuck in my head. They're saying, okay, the Patriots are, you know, that they have the best record in the league, but if the Chiefs win this is the one thing that they would do. The Patriots have never done, that Tom Brady has never done, which is win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. No other team has done it. And that's what that would really set them aside from the Patriots. And of course, you know, the Eagles, they was their second one. But you know, and also being a black quarterback, you know, like what it means for and everything. So I mean, they were putting the consequences like that, and that is what really got me interested in the Super Bowl. Couldn't figure out who I wanted to. I wanted the Eagles to win. But yes, so I was just enjoying that. So I said 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. We're done with time. But if anyone has another question, if not, just a head up. We're gonna do our workshop. So I know we have outlined some of the sessions already. We're gonna drop in a bonus workshop where we're gonna talk more to the managing your pages, the kind of content that you can do, and so answering some of the questions like with what Jude was asking in terms of the website and what's the best way to publish and all these things. So you can look out for that as well. And of course, you can always reach out to us on the Goalside Reporters WhatsApp or Instagram. We're going to start our challenges next week. So, not next week, after the next session, we're going to start our challenge. But we already have some really good homework from Mr. Donald Oliver. I hope you're screenshotting or taking notes. I did. Things to try in 10,000 hours. Mr. Oliver, I want to say thank you. This has been, I think this has been our best session so far. I really appreciate it. I know, judging by the level of engagement and attendance throughout, you know, you've really impacted all of us. And we'll hope that we can do it again. Guys, thank you for joining. Thank you for asking all the questions. Feel free to follow Donald. What's your Instagram page if you're not following?
My Instagram page is the Donald Oliver. Let me just double check because sometimes I forget. But I am active. I just forget the name sometimes. Yeah, the. So it's THE, then my name, Donald Oliver.
Okay, I'm gonna drop it in the chat. You guys can follow him, please. And I'm sure I don't know how many DMs he gets, but if you have more questions, you can shoot them straight to him as well. Yep. We're going to be following this up. We're going to record the session and we're going to have a quiz. You'll get all of that in your email on the Smart Term platform. Not to some point this week for sure. Talia, your hand is up.
Okay, yes, I had a question. So basically what I find is that the most controversial and like unhinged topics tend to be most popular in the media. So let's say you're interviewing an athlete that is going through controversy. Would you say it's like the right thing to bring it up or like to gain traction? Or would you say that it's the best thing to stay clear of?
Depending on the context. What context are you providing me here?
I mean, let's just say that, like, for example, an athlete got tested and they found drugs and you're interviewing them. Would you say it's like the right thing to basically rile up that topic, continue to engage in that sort of topic?
If ever there was a time that an athlete was silly enough to make themselves available right after testing positive for taking drugs, I suggest to you to ask them the question.
So basically, you're saying that you think it's okay if you feed into...
It's not wrong.
It's not wrong.
And that's why I asked the context, right? Because I think I understand where we're going in terms of antagonizing. So, yes. For example, it may not be as explicit as taking drugs, right? But Shelley and Fraser Price would have just run on the national championships. And there was some breaking news that she and, God forbid, Jason split, right? Her husband. Don't ask her that after she competed running. Like that's just like poor taste. It has nothing to do with her sport. It has nothing to do with what she did on the night. Yeah, you're gonna make headlines in terms of controversy and what have you, but I think that is borderline disrespectful. So I understand in terms of antagonistic, but don't be. And guys, because you're just starting out in your career, if you don't need shock value. You don't need to pursue shock and awe to be infamous or famous, depending on how you look at it. If it's negative, it's called infamous, but you don't need it. You just need to work on the resonance part of it. That's all you should care for. Not the shock, the resonance. Let the resonance part of the story elevate your reputation, because you don't want to just start in this business and have people turn their nose at you and they don't want to talk to you. No, you don't need to be interested in shock and awe at the moment. It's like I wouldn't give a 3-month-old baby one chicken leg for all and eat. Like it's your timing is your timing, and I encourage all of you to just be patient. You don't need to be involved in shock and awe right now. Just tell really good stories. Then when you have the reputation, you can go after the big hitters and you can tell them that they are wrong about this, and you can create a storm and controversy and kick down the tent like what Jesus doing at the temple. Like you can do all of that, but no is milk time. No is for you to take your time and just create these stories.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Devar, I see your hand is up.
Good afternoon. So I have something to say. I'm a part of a club in hockey. That club has not been doing well.
Right.
So in terms of the matches that they've played and the tournaments that they've played, they haven't been doing well. So this year there's a next tournament coming up. What I also plan to do is that one of our players that play for our club is a national player. And what I plan to do is, even though I'm a part of the club and also a player, I plan to ask him, and the coach and some of the other players there, what do they expect for this season and this tournament, and if they're ready to do better than the season before.
Devar,
Yes, sir.
think outside the box here. Because your issue is the issue that you have is I don't think it has I don't think it has much to do with the actual sport and then performing in hockey. You have a couple of talented guys on the squad. The story I think should be is, how does the team improve? What do they do differently than what they did last season? Do they put in more training hours? Is the coach at his wits' end in terms of teaching the boys in order to become better? Are they committed to the cause? I think that's the angle you should look at it. And then there's the human nature of this. What happens to these really good kids who are involved in this team sport that they're not winning? What happens to them? Does it dampen their mood as far as their outlook in the sport is concerned? Ask those type of questions. And because in this case, you can get multiple stories outside of the usual team story that, okay, you did poor last year, where are the next year? You know, there are so many other questions that you can ask that can make compelling stories, but you just need to think about it for a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? Because you can just get a story from one of the guys, and that's your hockey story. Like, what's their future like? And then you can tie it in to say, well, they're hoping to register their second win in 5 years or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Then you can add that element to the story and, you know, put it out there.
One thing I could do is that what if, because our club have a very good history, so I could also document the history of that club. Also, one of the good players, I could ask them what was their journey for getting to this stage and playing for the sport, or what they like about it.
Yeah, and ask about their commitment and what made them so good. And there's always this dynamic that we observe as sports reporters and sports journalists, that a really good player in a pretty ordinary team, what happens to that player? Especially a young player who actually wants to go all the way. How do they stand out? How do they remain committed to the cause despite the fact that it's a team sport? You know what I'm saying? Find that out. See where his mind is and tell that story. And then you can tie it to the overall narrative of the school.
So really and truly, I'm the youngest one on that team. Everyone else is 18 and over.
So what you're telling the story of your personal journey and your team as well?
I wasn't planning on doing, but since you gave me an idea, I might as try. I might as well try and do it.
Okay. There's no downside to it. Let me just say that. Telling a story, there is no downside to it.
Devar, looking forward to seeing that story.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, as I said, guys, this was an exciting session. Thanks everyone for participating. I am going to